Hello. Oh, unmute. There we go. Hello. Welcome to Art History with Becca. I am Becca. Welcome to my class. Today we're going to be talking about abstract art, and then we will be doing a project with abstract art. So today what you need for your materials for abstract art, our project at the end, is some glue, a pencil, a pair of scissors, and some colored paper. I have construction paper. And if you don't have colored construction paper, you can find something like a magazine that's got a lot of solid color in one page. And you could, take that kind of advertisement and rip out the page, make sure it's a magazine that your parents will let you rip apart, and you could use this as colored paper. And that would work just fine for what we will be doing today. So let's give everyone a few minutes to log in. Hello, welcome everybody. Let's see. Good, everyone getting their supplies. I don't have colored paper or glue. Okay, so you can use colored paper from like a magazine like I just showed, or if you would like to use just a plain blank piece of paper and some crayons or markers or something like that, you could do something like that too. Did they use paint? Yes, they used paint in abstract art. They use a lot of different materials. Yeah, we are going to be doing paper today, so we're making collages. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over to my slideshow now, and we will talk about abstract art and the history of it, and just kind of what makes abstract art, and what does abstract mean even? Okay, so let's get started. Alrighty, so first, let's talk about what is abstract art. So the definition of abstract is a departure from reality. So abstract art then is something that is a departure from reality. It's not real life. It's not going to look like the real thing. And there's a lot of different levels of departure from reality. So there's a partial departure from reality. It can be slight, it can be partial, or it can be a complete departure from reality. So here in this picture, we've got Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. We've got Woman with Yellow Hair by Pablo Picasso. And we have an untitled painting by an artist named Francis Klein. Now, each one of these is technically abstract art, but they kind of go from a scale from partially abstract to fully abstract from left to right. So in Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night, it's definitely what I would consider to be an abstract painting of art. Hold on, what is going on here? Let me fix my slideshow. All right. Back to full screen. Okay. All right, so on the left-hand side, you've got Starry Night by Pablo Picasso, and it looks like the art. It looks like a village or a city, and you can see the stars in the sky, but you can still tell pretty much that it is a village or a city. And then you've got Woman with Yellow Hair, which is obviously a picture of a woman. She's got kind of a lavender or pink colored skin tone. It's not very lifelike. She's got yellow hair, which is an idea of, what someone's hair might look like. But it's not like super real or super lifelike. it's not exactly as a person would appear in real life. And then you've got this painting on the right, which is called Untitled by Francis Klein. And he's just kind of focusing more on colors and feelings and creating a mood or in a painting. He's not focusing on trying to capture a real life thing. And so abstract art is simply a departure from reality. So there's a lot of different types of art that can be considered as abstract art. So someone's asking, is Starry Night was by Vincent van Gogh? Yes, it was. And isn't Starry Night post-impressionist? How is it abstract? That's a good question. Well, post-impressionist is a term that describes paintings like Vincent van Gogh's work. But most terms for art and what is considered post-impressionist or realist or classic or Greek or Roman, or those words are all kind of applied to that kind of art after they were created. So when the artists were making post-impressionist art, they weren't calling themselves post-impressionists. They were, just making art. And then after the fact, historians came around and were like, hey, what should we call this kind of art that happened at this time period? And so they come up with a name that seems to make sense. So abstract art then, being a departure from reality, is kind of controversial on what is abstract art. And some artists believe that, or some art historians believe that abstract art goes back as far as somebody like Claude Monet, who was an impressionist painter. And he was before Vincent van Gogh. And the reason they're thinking this is because he really did do some art that was very abstract with his lily pond paintings and his lily studies. So here in the bottom left-hand corner is a photograph of this bridge, and this bridge has been kept up. And this is this is the water lilies, and it's a Japanese bridge at Giverny Garden. And so he studied this bridge, he studied the water lilies, and he studied the colors. Now, of these paintings, so there's the one right above the photograph, and that one looks a lot like the photograph in a way. It's definitely an impressionist painting where it's not exactly lifelike and it's a little bit fuzzy. But then all the rest of these paintings are of that same bridge. They're taken at different times of day. They are painted quickly or slowly, but each one of these paintings is of that same bridge, maybe from a different angle. And so this is one of the reasons that art historians argued that he was the start of abstract art, and he was painting in the late 1800s. But there's another school of thought where this is the first abstract painting, and this one was painted in 1911. And so there's the school of thought then that thinks that abstract art started with impressionists, and there's a school of thought that thinks that abstract art is a little bit different than impressionist or post-impressionist art, and that it started in the 1910s. This painting is called Picture of the Circle, and it's actually kind of an interesting painting because it's painted by an artist named Wassily Kandinsky, and we're going to be talking a lot about him today. And he didn't sign this painting at first. He actually had it in his art studio after he made it, and he didn't like it, and he didn't think it was very good. So he had it in his studio for a few years before he painted it, or before he signed it. And so down in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see his signature. So this is considered to be the beginning of abstract art. And what abstract artists did is they focused on achieving an effect rather than trying to make something look exactly like something. And so abstract art is also often called modern art, and it has no clear rules. So there's no like you can do, you can't do to make it look like that specific thing. And it's for artists who have like really big imaginations, who like to incorporate shapes and colors and textures into creating kind of like these powerful feelings with their art, and these kind of focusing on emotions, or focusing in on one specific object, or looking at things from a different way. And kind of the idea behind abstract art is to help people gain a new perspective through imagination, tossing away the limits of reality. So it's kind of like if you read a lot of stories, so there's kind of these sci-fi books that take place, you know, on outer space, and they take place in made up planets and made up places with completely different rules about how everything works. And so abstract art kind of takes art in that direction of like not focusing on reality and not focusing on how things actually are, and not putting all these rules and constraints behind it, but rather just trying to create and give you an opportunity to create, to broaden your perspective, and to use your imagination, and to just kind of absorb the painting and kind of get lost in it. So that's what abstract art does. And I mean, what is art? What makes good art art? And really, art is a communication. And in a lot of the art classes we were doing previous to this one, the art I was showing you was a literal communication, versus this abstract art is not a literal communication. Something that they tried to communicate simply was an emotion, like happiness, sadness, fear, worry, confusion. And a lot of abstract artists were living through some pretty interesting times. This artist, Kandinsky, he was living through World War II, and he was between Russia and Germany, and that was not really a great place to be during World War II. So he kind of escaped into the world of art and used art as a way to communicate kind of things that were happening and things that were going on, and maybe how he was feeling, or just kind of focusing on something that you could focus on rather than focusing on, you know, what was actually happening in a bigger scale, and not really wanting to maybe paint about war, or not really wanting to paint about reality at that time. He wanted to work on and study something else. And so I want to talk a little bit more about Kandinsky. So he was a Russian painter, but he was first a lawyer. So he went to law school, he became a lawyer, and then he was a professor at a law school in Munich, in Germany. And he was 30 years old when he started painting. So he's a good example of it's never too late to try something new. So he was 30 years old when he started painting, and they at first wouldn't let him into art school because they didn't think he was good enough. And so he just kind of went to museums, and these are some paintings by Claude Monet of a study that he did on haystacks. And so these are some of the paintings that he really studied and that he really practiced on. And so I just kind of find that fascinating about him, that he was 30 years old and he wasn't allowed into art school at first because he wasn't good enough. But yeah, here he is, one of the most famous abstract artists of our time. So let's keep going. So these are haystacks. So this is a landscape painting by Kandinsky as well. And it's called Landscape with a Greenhouse. And here he is, you can see his influence by Monet in the way that he does his fields a bit, but you can definitely see how he's starting to make his pictures more abstract. The fields kind of look like there's like these blues and purples and yellows. It's kind of like quilt squares. in the fields, and the shadows on the house even are like these rectangular squares, and pictures are like blobs of paint on to illustrate the house. And it's more like quilt squares and shapes rather than natural depictions of how this art would, or how this house might actually look in real life. And then if you look back at the mountains and the landscape in the background, there's just a lot of color there, and there's a lot of kind of rectangular shapes, and he's just getting very abstract with how he is drawing this landscape, how he's painting this landscape. It's starting to depart from reality. Here is another painting that he did. This one is called Moscow, and it is a painting of a real place called the Red Square. So on the right, there's a couple photographs from, not too long ago of the Red Square in Moscow, Russia. And on the left here is a painting called Moscow. So again, it's a very abstract adaptation of this real life place. You can see a lot of influence in there. Like if you look around, you can see the buildings that kind of have these upside down onions on their roofs. And you can kind of start to pick apart things that are of the real thing. But he was very abstract in it, that it doesn't look like real life. And it's got a lot of different kind of feelings and emotions. It's almost like anxiety or worry, or there's a lot going on at the time that he painted this. There's kind of some graves here in the front, and there's all of these different kind of almost explosion colors in the sky, and sunrises and sunsets, and a lot of different kind of feelings and emotions being painted here. And a very interesting piece to look at, especially when you have the photographs right next to it. So here is another painting that Kandinsky did. And so this painting, he was kind of just studying colors and how they reacted next to each other. And something interesting about color is if you stare at like a red color for a really, like if you just taped a piece of red paper onto the wall, and then you just stare at the red paper for a really long time, and then you look over to a blank wall really quickly, you'll see like spots of green. Or if you're outside and it's a really bright sunny day, and then you come inside, you kind of sometimes see black spots. Your eyes are adjusting to the different lighting, or adjusting to the different colors. And something interesting about color that abstract artists really studied is kind of how they vibrate when they're next to each other. Like if you put the colors red and green right next to each other, they're opposite colors, they're complementary, and if you put those two colors right next to each other, they almost like vibrate when you're looking at them. Like there's a lot of energy created from putting red and green right next to each other. And you see that with a few other colors too, like purple and yellow. If you put those colors right next to each other, they kind of vibrate and make like this kind of electric energy. And so there's a lot of study that went into colors and how they react and how they make kind of an emotional feeling. And so abstract artists studied that, and they were focusing more on an individual piece of something, or an individual emotion that they were trying to create, or an individual feeling that they were trying to capture, so that when you looked at the art, you got that same feeling. So this next painting is called Soft and Hard, and it is another painting by Wassily Kandinsky, and we're actually going to spend the rest of this class talking about Kandinsky. Someone's asking if we're going to talk about Andy Warhol. We are not going to talk about Andy Warhol in this class, and and I don't have another class this week where we'll be able to get into that. He's also an abstract artist, but he is later in the timeline. So Kandinsky started his art early in the 1900s, and so he was kind of the beginning of abstract art. That's why I chose to start with him, to talk about him. So this painting here is called Soft Hard, and he was studying kind of different shapes, and like a circle is a very soft, very natural shape, and a triangle has these sharp, hard edges, and then he put these colors on like this bright blue background that really makes like the oranges and the yellows kind of float or pop off of it. And so he was kind of studying how to balance the painting and how to make it feel like it wasn't like lopsided, or there wasn't more on one side than the other. And he was also kind of playing around with this idea of balancing these different shapes. And Kandinsky did a lot of study into his paintings. He was really kind of experimenting with how different shapes together and different colors together created an effect. And that is a lot of what abstract artists did. So this final painting that we're going to look at before we get into our art project today. So this is a painting called Composition 7. And something interesting about this painting is that Kandinsky did 30 sketches in watercolors and oil paints on like a small scale. He like made 30 different versions of this painting before he was ready to paint the final one. And something kind of fun about this is you can see the different circles kind of from his earlier painting, where he was still kind of studying the colors and how they react together. And he was also studying, the hard colors and the soft colors. He's got kind of some pastel colors, some watercoloring looking effects, but also these harsh, dark black and dark colors, and these sharp lines, and then these soft shapes as well. And so this painting, he did 30 practice ones before he made the final one. And then this final painting, he actually made it in about 4 hours, but that was after he had practiced a lot. Someone says, I see sushi, ice cream, and a penguin. There's a lot to look at in this painting for sure. And I think the longer you look at it, the more meaning it has, the more you'll see, the more you'll find. Maybe you'll find some things in there that are literal, maybe just some abstract ideas about things. But he wasn't really focused on a specific story with most of his art. He was a philosopher, and I told you he was a lawyer before he was a painter. And so he was kind of a storyteller with his artwork, and he kind of made social commentary on what was happening in the world around him, and and kind of emotions and effects and things that were happening. And so he put a lot of significance behind his artwork, and I'm sure that the news and the current events of the time would help to make some of his art make more sense. And that's the case too with a lot of abstract artists, because they're escaping from the reality, and they're painting something that kind of communicates about what's going on, but without knowing your history, it's hard sometimes to know what the art is supposed to communicate. And so art history can be a little bit tricky in that way, because there's not always an exact story when it comes to abstract art. Okay, so is there any questions before we move away from looking at these paintings and get into our art project? Oh, someone said they already have done an abstract drawing and they want to send it to me. That's awesome. You can email it to events@delphian.org, EVENTS @delphian.org. So send that in an email, and you can send me any of your artwork to that email from today. All right, so we are going to go ahead and make some abstract art now. So hello again. So behind me, I have, using the green screen, I have Kandinsky's Composition 7 on my green screen. So it's kind of fun. And all right, so let's go ahead and get started. So I've got colored paper, and I've got glue, and I've got scissors, and I've got a pencil. So all you need to do now is we are going to make an abstract collage of paper. So it's going to be kind of like one of these paintings, but using colored paper and creating shapes. So I'm going to kind of pick out my color scheme, and then I'm going to get started. I think I'm going to use a white piece of paper, but I think I'll use yellow so that it's maybe a little bit easier to see on camera. And I'm just going to cut out some shapes first. So I'm going to cut out a circle. Kind of try and create some of the soft, hard effects that he did in some of kind of the color studies. So I am going to, that picture that had all these circles in these squares, I'm going to kind of make something a little bit like that. I'm going to do that by cutting a circle, gluing the circle into this red paper, adding another circle around that out of red. I'm just going to try and get some like exciting, fun colors together. And I'm going to see if I can't get a painting that's just a really exciting picture to look at whenever I'm done. So that's what I'm going to focus on. So I'm going to do now some pink. I've got kind of 3 circles inside of each other like that. And I am going to put them on this yellow piece of paper. And I'm just going to repeat that and make some more circles. I would like to change up my background a bit. I guess green's probably not a good color to use with the green screen. So I'm going to a square around this one. I'm going to use my white piece of paper to just kind of hold it all together. Here's one square. So now I'm going to make another square out of green. Go backwards in order. I'm going to do this one next to this one. So let's see. Things I know about green. I know that green and red will create a lot of energy if I put them next to each other. So I kind of wonder what would happen if I put pink next to the green, since pink is a shader, a lighter shade of red. I wonder if you kind of get the same kind of feeling that you would get from red. Same kind of energy created. I'm going to put the pink on the green here. And then I think just for fun, I'm going to create the same circle combination, but I'm going to do it inside of the green square to just kind of see kind of the energy level of which one seems more exciting than the other one. So the next color of circle I'm going to do is red. Just trying to make something that's kind of bright and loud looking. It's got a lot of visual volume, you could say. It's like this picture will be kind of yelling at you, yelling at your eyeballs. Put the red and pink. And smallest circle. These are by no means perfect circles. And I'm going to put a blue circle inside of the red circle. Look like funny eyeballs, but you can see just the green with the pink. If I had to choose which one of these pictures was louder, I think I would say this one. Just because the way that the pink reacts against the yellow, for me at least, it's like much louder and much more like it's yelling at my eyeballs. Whereas with the green, it almost kind of calms it down. So it's not as bright, even though the only color that I changed is just the background. So I'm going to go ahead and make another one. Does anyone have some color combination ideas that we could try to see what kind of colors might look interesting together? So let's see. What if we did, I should do a red square with a blue, yellow, and pink. Okay, red square. That's where I'll start. So I'm going red square. Okay. And then with blue, yellow, and pink. Okay. So I'm going to do lighter blue, since that's the one that was close by. So I'm doing blue. And then I'll do yellow. And pink. What kind of color combinations are you guys up to? What colors are you trying together? Have you found a combination, a winning combination that yells at your eyeballs? Something that's really loud, really bright. When you look at it, you feel like, whoa, that's a lot going on right there. All right, so there we go. So now we've got this one. And it's kind of interesting, the blue on this one, because it does seem to react a lot with the red. And it does seem to almost be, the blue is almost floating off the red for me whenever I look at it. So that's kind of interesting. But then the yellow kind of is part of the blue a little bit, it feels like. Kind of looks like scrambled egg, or like a sunny side up eggs. All right, so now let's see, we got some other color: red, black, yellow. Interesting. Let's try that. We've got red. Black. And yellow is going to have high contrast on the black because one of these is a very saturated, means have lots of color in it. One is going to be not so saturated. Maybe lots there. I'm going to put another color inside of the yellow just because that's kind of what I've been doing. I'm going to try orange inside that yellow. All right. Do we have a winner yet? Which color combination is yelling at your eyeballs the loudest? All right, let's try another one. Let's see. Pink and yellow, orange and purple. What if I do that all together? I don't know if I have purple. Do I have purple? Nope, but I have blue, so I will do blue. I don't have purple, so I'm using blue. So I'm gonna do orange on top of my blue. There we go. And then someone said pink and yellow. So I'm going to do pink and yellow on top of that. Pink. Okay. Now, of these color combinations, which ones do you think are the loudest? Which one to you, at least, I mean, it might be different the way I'm looking at it and the way you're looking at it because it has to come through the camera to you. Which one of these is kind of the loudest at you? All right, so I'm gonna do one more. I'm gonna find another color combination on here. You guys got a lot of ideas. What if I do a green square, orange, dark blue, and pink? Okay, green square. It's my last one. We are almost out of time. Green square, orange, dark blue, alrighty. So there we go. A bunch of different color combinations there. And I think some of them are definitely, I would say, being loud and kind of yelling at your eyeballs more than others. And some of the color combinations, like the pink and the red next to each other, kind of like blend. They don't necessarily like jump out at you, but the red and the black definitely jump out at you, and the yellow kind of jumps off the black. But the yellow and the orange inside the black, they kind of like come together. So this was a fun kind of color study into the effect of how colors can create kind of like energy and excitement. And that is a lot of what abstract artists were looking at, is how can I create an emotion or a feeling using colors and just using shapes and abstract ideas, and not focusing on the real thing, getting you out of reality and getting you into your imagination of thoughts and ideas. So that is it for today. We're almost out of time. This has been a lot of fun. I would love to see all of your art. So if you want to email them to me, events@delphian.org, events @delphian.org, and I will get to see them, and I really look forward to it. So until next time, I actually have a class on Friday morning where we will be talking about Art Deco, which is art from the 1920s. I thought that would be a fun class to end on for my final class, since we are living in 2020, 100 years later, and that is that. So I'll see you all later.